Hello, everyone. It's Friday. You know what that means. It's time for fUNfiltered. So we're so glad you're here, y'all. Heather and Sarah took it last week, and they did an amazing job. So,
It was all Heather. It was all her.
It was all Heather. Why do you know? It was both of you. You both were amazing. And I watched it live. I didn't watch the replay. I was on. So anyway, welcome back. And Carol and I know are glad to be. I know I'm glad to be back. I won't speak for her. Maybe she's not glad. I'm glad. So welcome back to fUNfiltered. And I'm Shelley Brown, and I'm so glad you're here with us today.
And I'm Carol. And whether you're watching live or catching the replay, we're just really happy that you pulled the chair up and joining in on our conversation. Right, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I am, in fact, Sarah. And this is the place where we just honestly talk about book marketing, no hype, no pressure, just real conversations about stewarding your message well.
Yes. And before we jump in, just a quick reminder, if these conversations are helpful to you, we hope they are, would you go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell? Because all that's going to do is when we go live, you're going to get a notification that's drop what you're doing and go check out the live. And also give this video a like. It does help YouTube to start showing it to other people who need to hear what y'all are hearing. So
yeah, because there are authors out there who are trying to figure the same thing out that you are. And so we want to help them without them burning out or losing heart.
Mm-hmm. Or as we said on the last live, I think it was lose their mind. So the ship has sailed here, at least for me, but there's still hope for the rest of us. So we do read your comments, and we truly want to make this an experience that meets you where you are at as an author, as a marketer. Your questions and your struggles really shape what we bring to you here on fUNfiltered.
For sure. All right. Well, let's jump in, y'all, okay? We're continuing our series, What Successful Authors Do That Others Don't. So last week, Sarah and Heather talked about something that tends to make authors squirm a little, and that is platform. Not in the be everywhere or become an influencer sense, but in the relationship sense.
Right. They talked about how successful authors don't wait until launch week to think about connection. They build trust, they build clarity, and even consistency long before they ever ask someone to buy their book.
And today we really want to build on that idea, because the next distinction really explains why successful authors show up the way they do.
Right. And here's today's focus. Successful authors treat their book like a message, not like a product. All right. And that one shift can change everything.
Yeah, that's ministry. I mean, how you talk about your book, how you market it, and even how you show up for your readers.
And honestly, it really changes how heavy or how life-giving this whole process feels. Because when you can key back into the why that you wrote your book, then it opens the door for you to really grasp and really communicate that this is not just a product. It is a message that you were inspired to write that is meant to meet them in their pain and in their need.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit then about what that looks like. We're going to start by naming what happens when a book is treated like a product. So because most of us don't intend to do this, but it still is really common.
Yeah. When a book is treated like a product, the focus can very often sound like, buy my book, here's the link, it's on sale. And even please support me, because again, that keys into buy my book. So we need to kind of reframe how we see our book and how we speak about it on our platforms.
Yeah, for sure. And then marketing starts to feel less awkward. Mm-hmm. And I was on a call this morning with one of our authors, and she confessed. She didn't have to confess, but she confessed to me. She said, I just haven't been able to do anything for this last year. And she said, I hate having to promote myself and promote my book. It's just so hard for me. But she said, I know God has given me a message that, and she used the word steward, and we use that word a lot around here, really, because it is different for us as believers, is that God has entrusted a message to us to steward. And so she acknowledged that and confessed that this morning. She said, I need help. And so, it does help us to not feel awkward in our marketing and less transactional, right? Even a little desperate. Sometimes we feel desperate, or we come across as being desperate. So it's not because the author's heart is wrong, but it's perhaps because the frame is wrong.
Right. So when the book, instead of your prompting, when the book is at the center, the reader really does fade into the background, and they don't feel seen or heard, and their needs are not being met. And so they don't really care what your message is.
Very true. And the reality is that successful authors flip that. They start with their message. What is the burden that I carry for this particular reader, for my audience, for the person who is going to buy this book and benefit from it? What questions am I trying to answer? And maybe more importantly, what pain am I trying to name? Or what is the hope that I'm trying to restore?
Yeah, that's so good. And we talk a lot about this. So we're repetitive in some of these things. Like, what is their pain point, right? This isn't the first time we've shared this, but it is so important, which is why we continually reinforce this to our authors. And so when you think about it, the book really isn't the point. The message is the point. The book is simply the vessel that carries it.
Right. And when authors actually internalize their message, their marketing stops sounding like promotion and starts sounding more like service and being a servant to those who really do need their message, which happens to be in their book.
Right, exactly. So why does this really matter? Well, this is where we want to slow down. We want all of us to slow down for just a moment, because this is especially important for Christian authors. All right. When you treat your book like a product, success gets measured almost entirely by numbers, right? Gets measured by sales, rankings, and visibility.
And those things, let us just clarify, those things aren't bad, but what they are is incomplete.
Yeah, because numbers are important, as it means that people who represent those numbers are seeing and hearing the message they need. But as Christian authors, we're not just moving units. We're actually carrying something more important. We are carrying our stories that harbor truth, that bring hope, and lead people to healing and transformation.
Yeah, that's so good. This is the truth that we want to anchor today's conversation in. All right. And I may read this twice to you because it's super important. So for those aspiring to emulate, I don't know if y'all heard that very loud truck that just went by, but it's all I could hear. So let me start over with it. So for those aspiring to emulate what successful authors do that others don't, the reward is seen in both numbers and narratives, robust book sales, and more importantly, real lives impacted. That's the very definition of success for a Christian author. And I think I will read that one more time. When we're aspiring to emulate what successful authors do, because y'all, success leaves clues, right? So we have a lot of clues. So the reward is seen in both numbers and narratives, robust book sales, and more importantly, real lives that are impacted.
And isn't that kind of how Jesus approached his time here on earth? You know, as you were talking, Shelley, that's just what I could constantly go back to, is that he wasn't, yes, did he speak to the 5,000? Absolutely. Yes, did he want to get his message out? But he didn't prioritize numbers over people and didn't prioritize, you know, the results over the relationships. And I think that is a beautiful example as to why we as Christian authors have to value, yes, the number of people, but also the narratives, the stories, the messages we are sharing, because Jesus did no less.
Yeah, I agree. It's all so important. And they do work together. Numbers and narratives, sales and stories, it goes together, and each one represents a life that needs hope.
Yeah, and that's the difference right there. Successful authors don't choose between impact and sales. They understand how the two work together when the message stays front and center.
Yeah, when the message leads, marketing does look different. So basically, the simplicity of it is, instead of saying, "Here's my book," they say, "Let me talk about the struggle that led me to write it." That's where they're going to connect.
Yeah. Instead of pushing links, they tell stories. They ask questions. They name what readers are already feeling but haven't had words for yet.
Yeah. And here's the beautiful irony. When authors stop trying to sell their book, and start faithfully sharing the message, the book actually sells better.
Yeah. You know, I think this is where some authors get a little bit nervous, because they worry, if I don't talk about the book directly, people aren't going to buy it.
Yeah, but readers don't really connect with products. They connect with the feeling of being known and seen.
Right. And when the reader feels seen, the book becomes an obvious next step. It's not a forced next step. So let's make this practical. All right. So here's a few questions that we'd like for you to just sit with this week. Carol, tell us the first one.
Yeah, so the first one you might ask yourself is, what is the core message God trusted you with in this book?
The second one is, what problem does your book help name, explain, or gently guide someone through?
Yeah. And when you talk about your book, are you leading with where to buy it or with why it needed to be written?
One small shift can change how people are going to receive this message.
So if marketing has felt heavy or awkward, this might be why. You were never meant to sell a product.
Right. You were meant to steward a message, and when you do that faithfully, it's God that handles the fruit.
Yeah. So that's just, this teaching has been so important, because we all need to really sit in this place as we really process our book. So before we wrap up, though, let's just see what's happening in the chat. Thank you all for chiming in. It's fun to see that you're here. And we do have a question. So if you have other questions or comments, go ahead and put it in the chat. But the question is this. By 17 Goodness, she says, I have a question. What if your book is a novel? It may have a godly message, but it's really hitting a pain point other than providing an escape or pleasure to read.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. I mean, novels do actually, they can work the same way as a Christian living or any other type of genre within the Christian market. But what a novel does is it does bring a sense of entertainment, but it also brings a sense of awareness, because you're stepping inside of someone else's story in a way that doesn't happen when you're doing a Bible study or when you're doing a devotional. And so that can indeed hit a pain point that the person is, walking through. And so we've had even people that have written at Redemption Press have written novels based on their true life story. And in that way, they're really able to help others who are walking through, whether it's abuse or trauma or a disability or an illness. And those can be the place where your message lands and brings hope.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with that. I also think too is the joy of writing fiction is that you have these messages, you have these themes that you can communicate through words, but you also have the ability to craft the story in a way that brings them to that truth. And so I think novels, quite frankly, sometimes have the strongest messages because you have the ability to carry the reader very specifically to that message. So I would just encourage you, as you're fleshing that story out, to really find that one message, that one theme that you're communicating to your reader. And then that gives you, what does that message, what pain does that address in my reader?
Sarah and Carol, do you think that at times a novel could, perhaps it's just that they are going on vacation for the summer and they just need an escape and that's their pain point, so they're going to immerse themselves in somebody else's story?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what oftentimes we do when we just want to kind of pull away from some of the pressures of life. And so it's okay if it's an entertainment only, and just purely for fun. I mean, that's why we watch comedians, or we turn a movie on that doesn't necessarily pertain to our circumstance.
Right.
But there is a unique element, especially within Christian fiction, because there always is a place where redemption is surfacing. And that's a hope that we need all the time, whether life is hard or we just need to be reminded of it, even when life is good.
Yeah. I'm reminded of, I think it's Lisa Harper. She wrote it, and it was very memory, but the title was The Sacrament of Happy. And oftentimes themes like joy, happiness, that is just as sacred as the really hard stuff like loss or illness. Both and. So whether you're providing that encouragement, that joy, and maybe just the joy of escape away from the craziness that is our world, I think identifying what that purpose is and what that message is just a really good place to start, whether you're talking about joy and escape or loss and really deep, deep, deep messages that mean a specific painful point.
That's really good.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments in the chat? I don't think I see any others right now. All right. Well, if you have any questions and you're watching the replay and you have any questions or comments, we'll check back in and we'll definitely respond to anything that is put in the chat. So particularly questions and comments. So feel free.
It looks like we have another one.
All
Since many people don't actually buy and read books like they used to, should we do podcasts along with our book? 100%. Well, now, do you mean, I guess that could be guest on a podcast or an actual personal podcast? Marriage 911 God's Way Modesto. Would you answer that question for us?
Yeah, I think both are important, though. I mean, you could definitely be on someone else's podcast and get your message out. You could, anywhere. You can speak, you can do signings, you can do a workshop, you can speak at your
Start a
church, and you definitely can start a podcast that goes along. There's a lot of authors that do that, and it just gives another way for your message to get out. The more resources you give, the more opportunities people have to find you and the message that God has given you.
And I actually heard a statistic recently that particularly Christian books, like it's going up. It's not going down. People are reading, and people want, not just want, they need hope, and they need answers. And so Christian books content, it's going up, increasing. So book sales are
Shelley
actually.
and I were just at CPE, the Christian Product Expo, and our authors were asking that question to the retailers: how are your book sales going? And they all said that book sales were going up.
Yes.
And we see that even on the national level, that Christian book sales are going up.
Yeah. So be encouraged with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes, it is good to hear. All right. So if there's no other, I think that's it for that. So y'all, this is where we say have a wonderful weekend. We're so glad that you joined us today, and we'll be back next week, next Friday, same time, same place, with another conversation in our What Successful Authors Do That Others Don't series. So again, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any episodes, okay?
Yeah, and if
And
you're
listening and thinking, I know my message matters. Oh,
we have a delay.
do you want me to?
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Sarah, carry on.
Oh, of course I am delayed, because I mean, that just sort of goes with my whole life, right? You know, slow and steady. Sometimes they win the race. So if you are listening and thinking, wow, Sarah's very entertaining. No, not really. That's not what we're talking about. In fact, if you are thinking, I know my message matters, but I need help stewarding it well, that's exactly why Book Marketing Pro Academy exists. So go to bookmarketingproacademy.com to learn more. And now to you, Carol.
Yeah. So inside BMA, we help authors move from confusion to clarity, and really from a place of pressure to peace. And we do that through these trainings, but also through coaching. And so on, just coming up on Saturday, we have a coaching session, and we can talk through some of the questions that you have pertaining to this subject, as well as any subject you have. And so our members are able to just place their point of need in our chat in our Facebook group, and they're able to tell us where they really need some help. And we want to guide them, because they're all in a different place, and we want to make sure that we are walking alongside you. But even if someone is ahead of you or even a little behind you, you can always learn from the coaching sessions and just be a part of that community.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of the best kept secret. The value in those coaching sessions are mind blown. So, all right. Yeah, do. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Till next Friday. Have a good weekend and a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.